it. And it begins with a girl named Juanita, who lived with her mother and father in a little house in a village in Mexico. But the story actually does not begin in that little house. It begins in Grandma and Grandpa's house across the way, where Juanita would go after school. And Juanita's grandmother would pour a nice glass of milk, and she would sit down and listen to her grandpa sing his songs and tell her stories, all kinds of stories, adventurous stories, sad ones, happy ones, laughing ones, all kinds. She loved those stories. And the next day after school, she'd run over there again. Grandma would pour a glass of milk and she would sit down, and Grandpa would sing his songs and tell her stories, all kinds. And the next day and the next day, a glass of milk and Grandpa sing his songs and tell her stories. It was wonderful until Grandma died, and Grandpa was alone and lonely. Juanita's mother and father said, "Let's bring Grandpa here. He can live with us. Grandpa, come live with us." He smiled. "Thank you, thank you." Juanita was so happy Grandpa living right there with them. It was like any time she wanted, she could sit down next to Grandpa, and what would he do? Sing his songs and tell her stories, all kinds of stories. This is how it went. And it was very nice, except that, well, it was a small house, and now there was another grown-up living there, and there really wasn't enough space. And Juanita's mother and father shook their heads. "Oh, this is not working. What can we do?" Wait a minute. There's a little shack out back. We could fix it up. Put a bed in there. Make Grandpa his own little place. Grandpa, what do you think of that idea? And Grandpa said, that could work. And so that's what they did. They fixed up that little shack for Grandpa, and Grandpa would come in and have his meals with the family. Then he'd go out there and sleep. And after school, Juanita would either find him in the house or go back to the shack so Grandpa could sing his songs and tell her stories. And it went like that for a long time, but as time went by, sometimes Grandpa did not come in for some of the meals. And sometimes Juanita, well, she had other things she did, and she didn't always go back there to listen to stories. She did other things. And then one day, wow, I haven't seen Grandpa for a while. Oh. And she went out. She knocked on the door. He said, "Come on in." And she went in, and there was Grandpa sitting on his bed. And he was shivering. He was shivering. "Grandpa." She ran over and hugged him. "Oh, Grandpa, you're cold." And he said, "It's okay. But Juanita, would you go in the house and get a blanket for me? That's what I need." "Oh, yes, Grandpa, I will get you a blanket. Don't worry, I'll be right back." And Juanita ran into the house. She opened the closet door where they kept all the blankets. "Oh, that's the one Grandpa should have, the one on the top shelf." She started jumping up and down, but she couldn't reach the blanket. Her papa walked in. "Juanita, what are you doing jumping up and down like that?" "Oh, Papa, I can't reach that blanket on the top shelf, and Papa, Grandpa's cold, so I want to bring him a blanket." "Oh, Juanita, that is very kind. Here, I'll get it for you." And he reached up, and he brought the blanket down, and he gave it to Juanita. "Take it out to Grandpa. He'll get warm again." "Okay, Papa, good idea." "Okay." She started to run out, but then she stopped. And she turned around and she said, "Papa, do you have some scissors?" And the papa said, "Scissors? what do you want scissors for? And she said, well, I'd like to cut the blanket in half. And he said, you want to cut the blanket in half? Yes, Papa, but that's a really nice blanket, and it's not a good idea to cut the blanket in half. Why in the world do you want to cut the blanket in half? And she said, well, Papa, you know, if I had half a blanket, I would take out to Grandpa, and he would get warm again, and I'll save the other half for you, so you'll never be cold. And her papa looked at Juanita, and he said, oh, my daughter, would you say that again? And she sang, half a blanket for Grandpa, so he'll be nice and warm. Half a blanket for you, Papa, so you'll never feel the storm. Half a blanket for the time when you grow old. So you will never, never, ever, you will never be cold. Juanita looked at her father. There were tears rolling down his cheeks. He hugged his daughter and he said, oh, you are the wise one. You are the wise one. Thank you, Juanita. Thank you. Juanita, I just got an idea. I think maybe we should invite Grandpa back into the house so we don't have to worry about him being cold. What do you think? And she said, that would be a great idea, Papa. I would love that. And so they brought Grandpa back into the house. It didn't seem so crowded at all anymore. And now Juanita got to listen to Grandpa sing his songs and tell her stories. And that's the story of half a blanket. Half a blanket for the time when you grow old. So you will never, never, ever, you will never be cold. And that's the story.